Marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome to Utah. Ismi Lari, and I'm from the state of Utah. Today, I would love to introduce you to a few of the beautiful places and a little bit of the history of my state. And maybe you'll get interested and you'll want to look up some more and you want to visit someday. Utah is one of the most beautiful and diverse states in the United States. It lies in the west of the United States, in the center, and is a very Western culture. It's about half the size of Iraq, but we have only 3 million inhabitants, so there's lots of space and lots to explore. In the center of Utah, the northern center of Utah, we have the Great Salt Lake, which is one of the largest salty lakes in the world. In fact, it is so salty that if you lay down in the lake, you float to the top instead of sinking to the bottom. In the middle of the Great Salt Lake is the Antelope Island. And Antelope Island is a fascinating place because there are a large variety of animals there. There are herds of wild antelope, herds of wild horses, and herds of buffalo. And west of the lake is the Great Bonneville Salt Flats, a huge expansive desert which is made up of a salt rock floor so smooth that people come from all over the world to race their cars and their motorcycles across it. In fact, many of the world's speed records have been won at the Bonneville Salt Flats. And this particular car was the first automobile ever to travel at more than 1,000 kilometers an hour. Utah is known for its national parks and forest land. In fact, there is more national park and forest land in Utah than in any other state other than Alaska. And one of our favorite parks is Arches National Park. And my daughter in particular loves that park, and she wants to say a few words to you about that.
My favorite place in Utah has to be Arches National Park. I just have so many memories of me and my dad climbing on the arches and running through the sand, and overall it's just a really beautiful place.
So Arches National Park has 2,000 stone arches created by the action of the wind and the rain and the snow, and more arches than any other place in the world. As you can see, there are a couple of very small dots in these pictures. Those are my 3 daughters sitting down at the bottom of the arch. We hiked there 2 years ago. It's one of our favorite places. Bryce Canyon and Goblin Valley are the 2 largest collections of hoodoos in the entire world. Do you know what a hoodoo is? A hoodoo is one of these strange stone pillars or shapes that, like you can see in these photos. There are several other important national parks in Utah. For example, Zion and Canyonlands National Park are made up of huge walls of sandstone, in some cases canyons and buttes that have been carved out of the rock by the action of the Colorado River and the different rivers and waterways that run into it. There are many more places in the Red Rock Desert of Utah that I love, and I could spend all day showing you these photos. But probably the favorite place of my family and myself is the Coral Pink Sand Dunes, which is a state park in Utah. And we just love going there and playing in the sand. You can see my daughters rolling down the hill. But I need to tell you a little bit more about the diversity of the state. Towering above the desert are beautiful mountains, and they're covered in pines and aspen, so they're green and beautiful, and they're dotted with mountain lakes, alpine lakes. When fall comes, the mountains turn a rainbow of reds, oranges, and yellows. And then in the winter, we have what we in Utah proudly call the greatest snow on earth. Utah is also famous for its skiing. And we Utahns say that Utah has the greatest snow on earth. And it's a particular climatic conditions that cause the snow to be very light and dry and fluffy. Skiers say that it's like skiing on floating across the feathers. So in 2002, we actually hosted the Salt Lake Winter Olympics, and we're still very proud of the job that Utah did hosting the Winter Olympics. But enough about the place. Let's talk a little bit about the people and about the history of Utah. Before the white settlers arrived in Utah, it was populated by the Ute Indians, and Utah derives its name from the Ute Indian tribe. But the Utes were not alone. There were a number of indigenous tribes in Utah at the time, the Goshute, the Paiute, the Navajo, and the Shoshone among them. The first white settlers in Utah were members of the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they were driven out of their homes in Illinois and Missouri in the winter of 1846 and began a journey 2,000 kilometers across the continent to Utah. Between 1847 and 1860, some 60,000 Mormons from all over the world traveled to Utah. There was no train at the time, so they were walking, they were on horseback, or they were in wagons. For example, Thomas Memmott was my ancestor, and you can see that we have a lot of family resemblance. He's quite a handsome guy. So Thomas set out on a wooden ship from Liverpool, England in 1862. It took 42 days for him to cross the Atlantic Ocean on this wooden ship, and once he got to New York, he was still 3,500 kilometers away from home. So he had to travel by foot, by horse, by wagon, 3,500 kilometers, and upon arriving in Utah, he had to build his own home. Once they arrived in Utah, most of the settlers became either farmers or ranchers. In my family, my mother's family all became farmers, and many of my father's family became ranchers. And even in Utah today, we still wear our cowboy hats and our boots whenever the rodeo comes to town. Here in Baghdad, I keep my hat and I keep an old set of spurs to remind me of my family and my heritage in Utah. When I think of Utah, I still think of the beautiful natural places that I love to explore. Many of the photos that I've shown today, I took myself, and I would love to travel through Iraq and take photos here as well. I'd be interested in seeing in the comments what places you would all recommend that I travel to and take pictures of in Iraq someday when I get the chance. So thank you very much for watching this, and ma salama.